Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. And Pete, no better day than today to be talking about what's going on in the markets with you and me, the
Yeah.
Rebels, because there's basically three types of people, Pete: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. And clearly, what happened in Twitter, I'll dive right into the macro, Pete. What happened in Twitter came as a shocker to some people, but you know what? We had unusual activity a week ago.
Imagine
And
that.
that,
I was told that didn't work, John. I was
yep.
told by a bunch of genius option traders that happen to be on networks that are saying there's no such thing as, I don't understand this whole thing with this unusual. What are you talking about? Huh. Imagine that, John.
Yep. Imagine that, Pete. I mean, Twitter, they came in and bought the 46 calls last week, folks. That's the 46 calls. That was when the stock was in the 30s. Well, guess what? The stock pops today to
Yeah.
50 a share. And those calls went from 64 cents to $5, Pete. I'm sure it was just an out of the money shot that
Yeah.
somebody took on a call that expires this Friday, the 7th of October.
On a stock that suddenly goes to the highest levels basically of the year, damn near, right? I mean,
Yep.
I think in May it got up towards 50, John. It's unbelievable. We love it. It's what we do for a living. It's why people love Market Rebellion, because we are the rebellion. We do go out, we do our own thing, and we let the clowns do the clown show. Oh yeah, I've never stood on a trading floor, but by God, I know exactly what happens with these options. This is all BS. It's like, really? Okay.
Yeah, you've
Well, good
you've
luck.
sat on a trading desk, maybe, or you've been upstairs supervising, a wealth management firm. You don't know crap about what really goes on when people are basically executing trades and putting their butts on the line with confirms, Pete,
Yeah.
with confirmations, not just, oh yeah, I bought it yesterday on the close and it's up 800 today.
Took a shot.
Uh, but then let's dive right in, Pete, to our topics of the day, starting with Rivian,
Yeah.
because boy, EVs are one of the hot spots. You and I talked about that slam dance they did on Tesla, despite the fact that they delivered 345,000 cars, 346,000, I guess, Pete. You know how many Rivian delivered?
I do. Go ahead.
7,600.
What?
7,600. That was production up 67%. And the stock makes a big pop on this, of course. And I'm not saying Rivian's bad, but it's
No.
like, let me see. So you're slamming Tesla because they missed production by 15,000 because of China. And meanwhile, these guys produced a grand total of 7,300 vehicles and were supposed to be cheering.
It's funny, John, because these top two items we're talking about here, we started off with Twitter, Elon Musk, and then we go over, we throw out a little Tesla, Elon Musk.
Elon
you
Musk.
know, but you're right, John. And I think the interesting thing about Rivian is, their number was 4,467. I mean, that's how, and now it's over 7,000. But the stock is getting a nice big push today. You're also seeing it out of ChargePoint. You're also seeing it out of Ford. You're also seeing it out of NIO. So the EV space and the perceived future EV space definitely seeing some really, really nice gains on this day. Although, across the board, John, it's amazing what we're seeing on a day where we've been up as much as 800. We're up maybe 700 right now, whatever it is. But it is an amazing day. And the EV space is the place to be. You and I see unbelievable activity consistently in there.
Pete, I'll tell you one of the places not to be until, of course, the deal was announced today, and that's Poshmark. I've shopped on there, Pete, and I think when you and I were talking about it before the show, we were saying, how could these guys have done so poorly? You come to market and you trade way up in the 40s, and then you have a takeover today that on a 13% jump gets you back into the teens. I mean, that's pretty bad, right?
Yeah, John, they've got a great cash position. They've got some great free cash flow, but how they haven't prospered, how they just IPO'd a couple years ago, $42 a share. This is a company that went to the single digits. How did they screw that up so bad? I really don't know. I mean, I would expect that they were actually right place, right time. You're in a pandemic. You've got an internet company that's going to be selling, fun stuff, used stuff. So it's not the highest level of all time, but you've got a combination of deals that you can get there. And we all know what really happened throughout the pandemic, whether it was Walmart and Target and all the rest of these groups that had this advanced kind of work that they did in terms of in the cyber world, people ordering and everything else. How did this not work? I just am dumbfounded by it, but it didn't. And now these South Koreans are going to be pretty happy. I think they'll probably be able to figure out a way to make it work, John. But right now, this thing popped and it stopped. It's exactly basically right where the number is, where they said, we're going to buy this company for what, 17.90? That's about where the stock is right now.
Yep. This is one, obviously, if you were in it, it was a lot of pain unless you got in the single digits. And I'd say adios to it right now. All right, Pete, what about Caesars? Caesars gets an upgrade today. That's, of course, 20 plus resorts. They've also got a number of other stocks like Penn Gaming, like Wynn, like MGM, all moving up. But from what I saw, Caesars was the one that got the big upgrade today. And it gets a nice pop. They're up as much as 4 times what the market is up today, depending on which one of these casino operators we're talking about.
Yeah, and the big thing that you missed out on, John, is how about Rod Stewart? He's re-upped. He's going to 2023. Sir Rod Stewart, by the way.
Wait, what's Sir Rod Stewart?
Yeah. So Sir Rod Stewart, he'll be back. He'll be there in 2023. Absolutely amazing that guy is still standing and doing as well as he's doing, but he is, and he's still pretty great. But it is interesting, John, because what we focused on when we talk about a lot of these different companies, Wynn, Las Vegas Sands, we're looking at Macau. We're looking at the reopen. And yet you look at Caesars right now, and Caesars, these guys have absolutely been killing it across the board. They've been doing a great job. This actually gives them another big lift to the upside, obviously, today. I think when we talk about Vegas all the time, people have to really understand that the true Vegas names or Reno names like a Caesar, they've been getting it and hitting it, and people are going, and they've been doing outstandingly well, especially with some of that online gambling as well, John. So great for them. I think it's deserved. I think these are all going to do well. And Vegas Sands and Wynn. The other day I bought some Wynn, just full disclosure, because of the fact that I think we finally are in position for China to actually open and stay open. That's my presumption. That's why I bought it.
I agree, Pete. And this is the only, I own MGM calls as well. So those are the 2 I own, MGM and Caesars. And I like the move. I think they do well, Pete. Let's talk just for a sec about cryptocurrencies. And that's because, of course, Kim Kardashian got fined $1.2 million thereabouts because she didn't disclose that she was paid to promote cryptos, and particular an alt asset, an altcoin. Pete, this, of course, put a black cloud over cryptos again, and they didn't need it, but they are a risk-on asset. They are not a protective asset like many of us hoped they would be. Instead, when there's risk on, they come for these stocks. So even though crypto itself, Bitcoin and Ethereum, are moving a little, like 2%, that kind of stuff, these Mara, which is Marathon Digital, or Riot Blockchain, or any of your top crypto names are moving up double digits. And that's, I think, Pete, because they are indeed a risk asset. And people are basically saying, well, if it's all clear and rates are going down, these are going to be going up.
And you're exactly right, John. Rates have come down dramatically. When you think about last week, we were looking at 10-year at 4, above 4, and here we are now, and call it 3.6, something close to that level. That's a pretty big beating in a very short period of time. For anybody who doesn't understand the treasuries, and they look at that and they say, well, that doesn't seem like much. It really is. And they've been absolutely hammered back down to the downside pretty rapidly. But Coinbase is another one, John. I mean, across the board, you actually are looking at it and you're seeing Bitcoin back over 20,000. Not that that's the biggest thing in the world, but it's good to see that the crypto space is starting to get a little bit of action there. And people who are looking for that, next level, these are the names that they're coming after. You brought up Riot as well. So we're seeing a pretty decent move across the board in just about everything crypto today.
Pete, I'm going to throw out an unusual, but I have to mention crude oil
Yeah.
because our pal, Brian Sullivan, is over there in Vienna, I guess, Pete, right now, getting ready for tomorrow's big meeting of OPEC and OPEC Plus members in Vienna, Austria. So crude oil was 79 last Friday, Pete. Today it explodes all the way up to almost 87.
Yeah.
And that's another several percent move to the upside. I don't know if you want to fade it though, Pete. California's got record gasoline prices again. So all the folks that kept saying, "Oh, it's gone down 20 days in a row, 30 days in a row." Yeah, by what? 1 penny, 2 pennies a gallon? They're right back through record highs in California. So my pick today, Pete, for unusual activity is a stock that helps people get it out of the ground, whether it's onshore or underwater. Rig, Transocean, we used to call it, but Rig, 20,000 of the November 3 calls. So if you're somebody who trades stock, this is a really bullish upside play because 20,000 is 2 million share equivalent. So if you multiply 2 million shares by $2.84, yeah, nearly a $6 million investment here, Pete, in this one trade, just one trade for Rig. Those were November 3 calls. And in full disclosure, I bought the stock.
Well, John, it's interesting because all those guys who are sitting there touting how great it is, and it is great to see some of those oil prices come down at the pump. We all know that.
Yep.
But they always seem to miss out on the fact of, okay, but where was this before? You know, I mean, it's like they're just talking about the last couple of weeks or months or whatever. It's like, hey, guys, this is a problem. And it starts with the guys in Washington, D.C. that have made a lot of the decisions that have been made why we have oil prices at the pump, gasoline prices as high as they are. So let's keep all that into some form of reality. John, I've got one for you too in terms of the unusual though.
All right.
So semiconductors, that is not a full sector, but it is a subsector that we oftentimes talk about. I usually use the SMH as a way to, use it as a barometer of what's going on. Absolutely flying today, John. They've been really participating even much more so than the rest of the markets, screaming to the upside. One of the names that stuck out for me today, Western Digital. Now, this is a name that does a lot of different things. You can call them a bit of a chip stock. You can call them a data storage company, however you want to frame them. But they definitely are somebody who aids you towards the cloud. And it's something that I think is going to get bigger and bigger. And we know how that direction is where people are going. Well, we got a buyer because the stock has been absolutely decimated, smacked to the downside. It's just barely off 52-week lows. Stock was trading about 35.75, John. They bought 10,000 of Friday's expiring, so these do not have a lot of time. October 7th, the 37 calls. Stock's just under 36. They're buying the 37 calls, 21 cents up to about 42 cents for those options. This is a company that's got great free cash flow. They're nearly a single-digit PE, so are they cheap? Yes. Have they gotten beat up? Yes. Is there potential for a little bit of upside? I'd say yes. Does it mean these options have to work? No. But it's interesting to see people out there buying a nice big chunk, looking for a nice move to the upside.
Pete, before we go on to sports, I just want to say quickly that in addition to Twitter, which we had on unusual activity, we also, you and I spoke last week, Pete, a week ago today, in fact, about Carvana. And how we said, look, they finally pulled the rug out from this thing and it's down so hard that we're saying don't sell it. You should think at least about buying it down here. And sure enough, Pete, it's turned around in the last couple days. Carvana has, and we had unusual activity on it yesterday again. And now here it is, giving people a big fat return in just 24 hours for that unusual activity. But if you bought it on those lows, boy, are you a happy camper.
Absolutely you are. Yeah, that's great. John, we're going to jump into sports because we just love it so much. And I'll tell you, we're going to start this time with the NFL. Now, who are the top teams and why? Well, I would say all you've got to do is look at the list of the top defenses in the NFL right now, and you're going to find your top teams. Who are they? Number one, Buffalo Bills. Who did they just beat? Well, supposedly you can't stop Lamar Jackson. Well, these guys did a pretty good job, and their defense really held up. Lamar had a very good game. He ran for 70 yards. He threw. But I'll tell you what, that Buffalo team is unbelievable. They're the number one defense. Who's number two? They were number one, the 49ers. You know who's number three? The Philadelphia Eagles. You get the idea of where I'm going here. The
Yeah.
top teams in the NFL right now are those teams that have a powerful defense. We all love to talk about offense. We love to talk about guys throwing the ball around and all the rest of it. But I'll tell you what, John, when you look at what these teams are giving up in the pro game, that everything is funneled towards the offense, and yet you see a team like the Buffalo Bills holding to people to under 230 yards a game. That's pretty impressive. 14 points. That's pretty impressive. The Niners are holding people to 12 points. And you look over at Philadelphia, they're actually giving all the way up to 18 points. These defenses are absolutely amazing. What they're able to do, John, in the NFL, given all the rules that are set up for offense, for scoring, everything. And yet these teams that also do that side of it, except for the 49ers, do a really great job. That's why the 49ers have the record that they've got. It's why we kind of sketch around a little bit about them because, hey, look, Jimmy G's a nice guy, good-looking guy. He's got all that great stuff, but you never know what to expect out of Jimmy G. Is he going to step out of the end zone? Is he going to throw a stupid pass and an interception that's going to be costly? Probably. That's usually the way it goes. But when you look at Buffalo scoring 28 a game, John, Philadelphia, 28 points a game, it says a lot about how these are full-on teams. Their defenses are great and the offenses are great. I just wonder, what do you think? Are the 49ers ready to maybe make the next jump? Is Jimmy G the guy that they need back there?
Well, that I can't tell you the answer to, Pete. But what I can tell you is that that is the number one defense because you look at Hurts, the quarterback for Philly, and you look at Josh Allen over there at Buffalo, two East Coast teams, and those are great offensive leaders, and they don't make a lot of mistakes. On the other hand, as you've already said, Jimmy Garoppolo makes a lot of mistakes. He's made them for years, Pete. Like you say, great guy, but it's one of the reasons nobody picked him up. It wasn't just the injury. It was that he makes mistakes. And so for San Francisco to have such a staunch defense in the face of the defensive activity they have to have because of those interceptions, because of stepping out of the end zone and getting a safety or whatever. I mean, they're on the field a lot. So that's your number one defense. And if they had either of those other two quarterbacks, Pete, they would be unstoppable. That's my opinion.
And the one thing we talked about yesterday, John, was Deebo Samuel, how he is the guy. And he really is the guy because Jimmy G's numbers looked pretty great. And you could say this about a lot of quarterbacks, but one of the passes to Deebo was about a 10-yard pass that turned into about a 60-yard gain. So, you know, that guy's just a special wide receiver. John, the second one we got to hit on is Penn State a poser or are they for real? And here's why I say this. They are 5-0. Everybody loves them because of the history of Joe Pa and what he built at Penn State and everything else. And are they a team that deserves to be in there? Well, I'll throw out a few numbers, John, and then you and I will figure this out. So they beat Purdue in week 1, but they had to have 14 points in the fourth quarter to be able to secure the win against Purdue. That's fine. Purdue's okay if they just beat my Golden Gophers. They beat up on Ohio, pretty terrible team. They beat up on Auburn, one of the worst teams now this year in the SEC. They beat up on a really stiff Central Michigan team, but it took the fourth quarter there as well. So I bring that up. Then this week it was Northwestern, and they struggled to beat Northwestern, John. That kind of scares me a little bit too. It's why I'm wondering, are these guys posers? Because they had to squeak by Northwestern. Both teams played sloppy, a lot of turnovers. It was really an ugly game. But let's be honest, Northwestern at 1-4 is not a very impressive ball club. Coming up, they've got Michigan in the big house. Then they got my Golden Gophers, who hopefully will play like they did the first few weeks and not last week. And then they've got Ohio State. So we'll find out if they're a poser or not. But what do you say at this point in time, John?
I say, Pete, what you said at the beginning of the season after seeing the first Michigan game, they're for real. I think Michigan is one of the top teams in college football. Now, they're not in the SEC, so they're not going to get the same amount of love. We both know that. But this doesn't look like the same team that got its butt kicked by Georgia last year. And in fact, if you put this Michigan team against this Georgia team, Pete, I think you have a completely different outcome. Does it end up flipping all the way around so that Michigan beats Georgia? That's months from now. But I do think they've got the guns and the defense, both the offense and defense, to deal with Penn State. And this is going to be one of those games where, you know, if they're a pretender, we'll find out. And if they're for real, we'll find out.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be interesting. College football's been great, John. The NFL, a lot of guys are telling me that they've been very excited about some of the stuff we've been talking about, and they're actually going to FanDuel and all this other stuff. We're not telling people anything about all that. We're just giving opinions about what we see, what we think about some of these games, but it sure is fun. And I'll tell you, we've got another unbelievable week in front of us for college and NFL. Starts off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's pretty exciting.
Yep. And coming up, Pete's lines for who's going to beat and who's going to miss. No, I'm kidding. But that might be out there, folks. Thank you for joining us on the Rebel's Edge. We always appreciate you guys sharing it with your friends. Remember, we stream live on Twitter, on Market Rebellion, and on YouTube. You can always find the episodes on YouTube. And please make sure you tune in Thursday when I'm coming to you from Cancun, Mexico, and Pete will be coming to us, we hope, from Florida. See you then.